What is going on, everybody, and welcome to my top 30 starting pitchers for 2023. I made this video a little while back, but decided to re-record it and give you guys some good clips in the background. This time, make it a much more palatable video. But yeah, these are my projections for the top 30 starting pitchers in MLB for 2023. Very much based on projections. I'm going to talk about some advanced stats, but try to, again, keep it palatable for you guys. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started with the list. Alright, so just before I get to the top 30, I wanted to give the 31st spot to Nestor Cortes. I don't think a lot of people thought he would be good again in back-to-back years, but yeah, he put together a great season. He looked like a Cy Young contender for like a quarter of the season. The guy gets decent strikeouts because his stuff is so deceptive, which is awesome. He's got pretty good command. I really like the cutter, and the peripherals say he's maybe not quite as good as some people think, but he's still a dang good pitcher. I couldn't put him on the list because the guys above are better, but ultimately, I think he might be really good this season and is a great addition to that Yankees rotation. Many top 30 lists try to base their placements off of peripherals, but many of them also leave off the guy that's kind of become the king of peripherals. Alex Cobb's numbers are insane if you look under the hood. His FIP is 2.8, his SIERA is like 3.13. He had a really awesome season. Unfortunately, his batted ball luck was not very good. But the thing with Alex Cobb is he's going to get ground balls at an insane rate and strike out about 9 guys per 9. That is a winning recipe, and I think in front of a better defense, because that Giants defense was terrible, Alex Cobb would put up ERAs in like the 2.5 and be in the running for Cy Young awards. To me, Joe Musgrove is kind of a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. He gets ground balls, but not more than some of the guys above him. He gets strikeouts, but not more than some of the guys above him. He's got good command, but there's guys with better command. He kind of has the same season every year. ERA around 3, FIP around 3.5, SIERA somewhere around there. He's kind of the same pitcher every year, gives you about 3 or 4 WAR. But that's a really good player to be, and Musgrove is in general a great player. And the highs are really high. The playoff performance and the no-hitter were unforgettable. Shane Bieber has seen a huge decline in his strikeout stuff. I mean, 2 seasons ago he had a 41% K rate. Now he only has a 25% K rate, but his command has definitely improved. I think that's what keeps him on this list. He was able to pitch a lot of innings, and he was able to do so without walking a lot of batters, keeping the ball on the ground. Shane Bieber is an excellent pitcher, and a lot of people will want him higher, but I do think with the declining of his stuff, I am a little worried that he'll continue to get a little weaker each season and won't necessarily be a top 30 guy anymore, which is why I have him this low. Padres' Blake Snell is a bit of an enigma, but I truly think this could be the season where everyone will start to see how great he still is. I mean, the guy had a 2.8 FIP and a 3.2 SIERA last year. The thing with Blake Snell is he is one of the strikeout kings of the league. He strikes guys out at a similar rate to pretty much any of the top guys that are in your head right now. The issue is he is prone to giving up a lot of fly balls, which in turn leads to home runs, and his walk rate isn't the best. But Blake Snell still gets guys out like crazy. He generates whiffs on his nasty stuff, and I think we could see a great season from Blake Snell where maybe he finally puts together some great traditional numbers in a Padres uniform as opposed to just having awesome peripherals. Alright guys, hear me out. Freddie Peralta could win the 2023 Cy Young. Yes, I did put him this low, but look at what he's done so far in his career. He's had some crazy seasons. He's had some crazy peripheral numbers. But one thing that was important to see out of Peralta this past season, even if he didn't pitch a lot of innings, he got that barrel rate down. He got way better at managing contact. And if he can combine that contact managing skills and getting more ground balls with his previous high whiff rate, look out, this guy could be the best pitcher on the Brewers. Glasnow might be the most unhittable pitcher in baseball. Yet we don't really get to see that, and that's why he's this low. Glasnow has a lot of injury issues, and it's really unfortunate he enters the season injured again. Glasnow, when on, is going to strike out like 36% of batters, and he may walk about 8%, and he may have about an 8% barrel rate, but ultimately the guy is awesome at missing bats, and he has a good ground ball rate as well. The peripherals are going to say he's up there with the deGroms of the world, but unfortunately he's just not going to pitch like some of the best pitchers in the game, which is why he had to be this low. If you looked at the basic stats, you might think Julio Urias is the best pitcher in MLB. He had a 2.16 ERA. And he led the league in wins the year prior. However, the thing with Urias is he doesn't get a lot of whiffs, he doesn't get a lot of ground balls, and his barrel rate is around 7%, which isn't bad, but isn't the best for a guy dependent on contact management. He has a great defense behind him, and if that defense were to regress, especially with the shift ban, I wonder if he'd still be putting up those crazy ERA numbers. He definitely deserves to be on the list because he has amazing results, but the peripherals say he might regress. So we'll see this next year. If he can put together another season like that, he may have to be higher on the list. Christian Javier is kind of the trendy dark horse pick right now for the AL Cy Young, and it makes sense. To me, he feels like the AL version of Freddie Peralta. However, that said, I do have a little bit of concern with him. I think that his ground ball rate isn't super high. He is an extreme fly ball pitcher, but ultimately he's striking out 33.2% of the batters he faces. He put up excellent numbers this past season, and the peripherals say they could get even better. This guy's a wipeout machine. His high heat is amazing. Look out for this guy next season. There's no doubt in my mind that Logan Webb is a top 30 pitcher. However, I think he could be even higher on this list. In 2021, we saw a bit of this. He looked insane. He had an insane ground ball rate and a pretty good strikeout rate. However, the strikeout rate really went down and the ground ball rate went down a little bit, but he still ended up putting better basic stats up than he did the previous season. The peripherals think that he's a really good pitcher, and yeah, if you have a ground ball guy that's going to get ground balls at about 60%, you know you have a good pitcher on the mound. If he gets those whiffs up again and gets that strikeout rate up, and if his defense performs just a little bit better, I think he could be one of those guys that's a dark horse to finish in the top 3 of the Cy Young voting. It looks like the Blue Jays have another great pitcher on their hands in Alek Manoah. Manoah had a really high volume and really good results in that volume. His basic stats were among some of the best. The peripherals don't necessarily love him, but I gotta say he deserves credit for having a low barrel rate and overall not allowing a lot of quality contact on his pitches, even if he isn't really someone that's out inducing ground balls. He's done a great job at that. I think if he gets more whiffs, I'll be willing to put him a little higher. However, being a fly ball guy that doesn't get a lot of whiffs, I do have to put him down a bit, but it was a really impressive second season for a guy that looks to be one of the great pitchers for the next decade or so. There are 3 factors to Framber Valdez's success. 1, his insane ground ball rate. 2, his massive volume. And 3, his crazy consistency. Valdez plays in front of such an elite Astros infield already, and he's one of the best generators of ground balls in baseball. I think he's going to be one of those perennial top 5 Cy Young finishers for years to come. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be good every single start. He's not going to have those blow-up starts. I think that's what makes Valdez such a worthy top 20 pitcher. Kevin Gausman might have been a little unlucky in 2022. His BABIP was 90 points higher than it was the previous season, despite his FIP taking a huge drop to 2.38, which is one of the lowest in Major League Baseball. Gausman struck out batters, but more importantly, he didn't walk any. He had a walk rate below 4%. He also kept the home runs down, even if the barrel rate was up a little bit. Gausman's an interesting pitcher because he didn't get many Cy Young votes, but if he had that batted ball luck that his partner Manoah would have had, maybe he could have been the winner. It's interesting to compare guys that play on the same team that have varying levels of BABIP, where Gausman didn't seem like the ace of the Blue Jays because of his slightly inflated ERA and WHIP, but if you look at the under the hood stats, it basically said that he's a pitcher that's probably even better than the spot that he's on this list. I can basically sum up the Kershaw entry by saying he's Kershaw. He is elite. The thing with Kershaw is he's not going to pitch as many innings, but I'm going to be optimistic about him because there's no weaknesses for Clayton Kershaw. You can say playoffs, but at the end of the day, he's a guy that still strikes out batters, does not walk batters, and has a pretty good ground ball rate as well. He's not quite the Clayton Kershaw of old, but that's largely because he's not as durable. He still has those insane rate stats, and he's still a guy to be feared every time he steps on the mound. Luis Castillo has left a hitter-friendly ballpark to go to an extreme pitcher-friendly ballpark in Seattle. That is a recipe for success. Castillo's a guy that the peripherals have always liked, maybe not loved, but there's always been a lot of potential for him to become an excellent pitcher. He gets a lot of ground balls, he gets a fair amount of whiffs, and I'm really excited to see him perform in Seattle. He looked really good. He's got a great fastball, he's got really good stuff altogether, and that changeup is absolutely deadly. Look out for him to be one of those top 5 Cy Young finishers by next year. I don't really love batting average or whip, but when you have a 185 average against and a .91 whip, you're pretty good, and Zach Gallen is really good. Gallen's one of those pitchers that doesn't really seem to be a master at anything yet, but he keeps getting better. He's been a breakout candidate for a lot of people, and he's still really young. He ended up having one of the best second halves of any pitcher last year in baseball, and the peripherals all say he's going to be a guy that'll probably be a sub-3 ERA pitcher for the next little bit. Zach Gallen's awesome, and there's really not a lot to say about it. I'm just really excited to see what he does next season. Going into this season, Brandon Woodruff was probably a unanimous top 10 pitcher, and now it's weird putting him outside that, but he wasn't quite his usual self. The peripherals thought he got slightly worse, and he was no longer that high ground ball dominant type pitcher that we've seen. But still, he struck out guys at an elite rate of 31%. His barrel rate might have went up, but he dealt with some injuries this year, and he was limited in terms of volume. He didn't quite look the same, but he's Brandon Woodruff. He's going to strike out almost 12 batters per 9. He is an elite pitcher through and through, and while the Brewers have a bunch of elite pitchers that might have overshadowed him over the years, he does deserve his flowers. He's been excellent for the last few years. For stat nerds, many might think of Aaron Nola as the guy that had the way higher B-WAR than F-WAR that one year. But Aaron Nola is also one of the better pitchers in Major League Baseball. He is incredibly durable, he pitches a lot of innings, and his command is really great. He had a below 4% walk rate this past season despite having a nearly 30% K rate. Aaron Nola's awesome. A lot of people will say that he's unlucky. Some people might dispute that by saying that his barrel rate on his fastball is pretty high for a top pitcher, but either way, I think he's definitely better than last year's 3.25 ERA or the 4.63 ERA the season before. Nola is a beast, and Phillies fans will be quick to tell you that. Max Fried is actually one of the more underrated aces in baseball. He doesn't have the highest strikeout numbers, but he makes up for it by being possibly the most effective contact manager in the game. His barrel rate is incredibly low, his ground ball rate is really high, and his walk rate is really low. And to be fair, his stuff is pretty nasty. He does get a fair amount of chases and whiffs on it for a guy that hasn't averaged double-digit K per 9 in a few seasons. Max Fried really is an underrated player and is going to eat a lot of innings and keep that ball on the ground and manage contact better than really anybody in baseball, and that's why he's absolutely deserving of a top 15 spot. Max Scherzer was Max Scherzer this past season. He's been consistently one of the best pitchers in the game for a long time now, and going to the Mets did not change that. He got a lot of whiffs, a lot of strikeouts, he had good command, the peripherals loved him, he was a little susceptible to fly balls, but he was Max Scherzer. The reason why he's not top 10? I'm a little worried about his durability. I think that with the age and some of the recent arm injuries and the fatigue issues he's had, I'm not too sure if he'll be that elite pitcher moving forward. But I think he's definitely deserving of being top 15 because what he's shown through his career, and he was still really, really good this past season, even if he had that playoff game blow up. There's probably going to be a lot of shock to see Verlander outside the top 10, and I myself really bounce back and forth of where I'd put Verlander, but ultimately, if he does fall off when he becomes 40, I do think it's okay to be ahead of the curve. The peripherals have said that yes, he is falling off in some ways. His SIERA is up, he doesn't get the ground balls, he doesn't get the whiffs on his pitches, but the one thing I'll say is his command is still really good. In fact, it's better than it has been in years. His command was elite. He had a below 5% walk rate, but I'm not too sure how that'll translate when he doesn't get the whiffs or the ground balls, and he's playing in front of a different defense, which, while good, probably isn't quite at the level of that insane Astros defense. I think Verlander's an excellent pitcher who deserved the Cy Young, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being a top 5 type guy this year, but at this stage in his career, I'm not sure if I can rank him as high as others would, just because I do think the regression is inevitable, sadly. I legitimately don't think anybody will be happy with this ranking, because Gerrit Cole is a very polarizing figure. He's a Yankee, so all the Yankees fans will think he's a top-flight pitcher, but all the Yankees haters will think he's not a top-flight pitcher. And yeah, he's definitely an interesting case because the barrel rate is really high and he allowed a lot of home runs, but it does show that there's some luck involved with that when he has an insane home run to fly ball ratio. But the thing with Gerrit Cole is he's going to strike out so many batters and walk so few, and I think that the strikeout and walk ratios are very much some of the most telling stats about future performance. I can't put this guy any lower when he's shown that he's one of the most unhittable pitchers when on. And yes, a lot of people will bring up the fact that he's regressed since the sticky stuff. However, I still think that based on his peripherals, he was a lot better in 2022 than the basic stats will let on. So I think a top 10 placement is fair for Gerrit Cole. Zach Wheeler's 2021 campaign was so good that he had to make this top 10. To have that crazy season, to have that high of a WAR, to have that low of a FIP and SIERA and xFIP, and to strike out that many guys but walk that few, it's just marvelous. This past season, he was just excellent. He didn't have the volume, but he still put up great numbers and great peripherals, and I really think a healthy Zach Wheeler is going to look a lot like that 2021 season. He's one of the most consistent pitchers, he's got excellent stuff, and in the playoffs, he was an absolute monster. He was the ace of the Phillies, and I think he's their best pitcher, even with Aaron Nola having some excellent seasons under his belt. Does Dylan Cease walk a lot of batters? Sure. but he strikes out so many batters. Dylan Cease is incredible at getting guys out, and he's really good at managing contact as well. His barrel rate was only 6.2% this past season. He also ate a lot of innings at 184 innings, and honestly, it just feels like a lot of people are forgetting about him despite being the runner-up in the Cy Young race. I think he's absolutely a top 10 pitcher, and his slider is one of the very best pitches in all of baseball. That thing is nasty, and the savant stats on it are crazy. Carlos Rodon goes to the Yankees off of a year that I really think should have been top 3 in the Cy Young race. The peripherals on this guy were absolutely nuts, and he really did have an amazing season. His high heat and fastball command is just absurd. Those fastball whiffs that he gets are crazy, and his stuff is just nasty. He's got great command, he doesn't get barreled up too much. I think he's going to be an excellent addition to the Yankees. The only concern is durability. He's coming off of his most innings pitched in a season, but I've heard he's dealing with a minor injury, so I'm not sure how much of a setback that will be. But Rodon, when healthy, is one of the absolute most feared pitchers in baseball and is deserving of a top 10 spot. It's crazy how Ohtani can both hit and pitch at such a high level, but it's not his hitting that gets him on this list. Even as a pitcher alone, he's absolutely top 10. The peripherals say he's one of the very best, and the eye test says he's one of the nastiest. His splitter is one of the best pitches in the game, and the fact that he can pump 100 despite being one of the best power hitters in baseball is crazy. But yeah, Ohtani might not get the innings pitched as the other guys, but he's going to have the insane strikeouts, the really good command. He's just one of the most well-rounded pitchers in general, and I think that's what makes him such a fun player to watch. He's a power hitter that's also a top 10 and borderline top 5 pitcher. What's there not to love about this guy? If you guys watched the first half of last season, Shane McClanahan looked like he'd be the future number 1 on this list and for years to come. Now, unfortunately, he fell off due to some injuries, but I think his recent commitments to health over the offseason show that he'll be a top 5 pitcher for years to come. You don't find guys with the 4+ pitches that he has that strike out over 30% of batters, walk below 6% of batters, and have over a 50% ground ball rate. But that's Shane McClanahan, which is crazy. His barrel rate is also below 6%. He's got that insane changeup. He's got a great curveball. His slider's pretty good. He just needs to get a little better at the fastball command and that durability, and he will absolutely be top 5 moving forward. He's absolutely insane. He led all of baseball in qualified pitchers in xFIP, and I really think Shane McClanahan's efficiency is another huge factor. He doesn't pitch a lot of pitches per inning, and he's very fast, so the pitch clock won't affect him as much. The peripherals don't love Sandy Alcantara as much as some of the other pitchers on here, but he's absolutely top 5 because he's going to pitch 220 innings and have the insane numbers that he does. He's a great ground ball pitcher. He manages contact really well, and when he's got that four-seam going, he does generate a lot of whiffs. His fastball is absolutely insane. His changeup is over 90 miles per hour, which is crazy. Sandy is an excellent pitcher, and there's not a lot to say about him that hasn't already been said. If he's healthy, deGrom might be the best pitcher alive right now. The issue is, he hasn't been healthy a lot in the past couple years. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, and that has slowed him down. But when he's on, he's on. That fastball disappears, it rises like few others, and that slider is one of the best pitches in baseball. He's absolutely unhittable. He's got insane control, insane command. He really commands those pitches. He gets guys out like crazy. He's going to have one of the highest strikeout rates, but also one of the lowest walk rates. He's just on another planet, but that's when he's healthy, and that's the thing. I don't know how healthy we'll see him, and if injuries will hamper his performance. That's why I'm going to conservatively put him at 3 for now. The Cutter King Corbin Burnes has really been the best pitcher over the last few years. He has been absolutely insane. He won that 2021 Cy Young off the back of the best single-season FIP since Pedro Martinez. He is absolutely unstoppable. Now, 2022 wasn't quite the Corbin Burnes experience of the last 2 seasons, but he was still really good, and the peripherals said he is a lot better than his basic stats like his ERA say. Corbin Burnes is an elite pitcher. He gets a lot of whiffs. He's got pretty good command. He doesn't get barreled up too much. He's the whole package, but he's not quite number 1 on this list. I think number 1 is going to shock a lot of people. My number 1 pitcher is Spencer Strider, and a lot of people are going to be angry about this. People say he's not proven enough. He hasn't had a season with the full workload, and I understand that. But I want you guys to keep in mind that as a rookie, Spencer Strider had a 1.83 FIP. He had a SIERA around 2.4. If he qualified with like 30 more innings, he would have been the leader in xFIP. He almost had 5 F4 as a rookie who pitched 131 innings. This guy is the real deal. He is the best pitcher in baseball right now at striking guys out. Again, as a rookie, 38.3% K rate. He is absolutely insane. He had a crazy low average against him, 179. His barrel rate was really low. Really the only issue with him is the walks, but I gotta say, he's a rookie, so he's gonna improve in that regard. But yeah, Spencer Strider, almost 14K per 9 as a rookie. He is going to be the best pitcher for a long time. He is so far ahead of his young pitcher peers, and we've talked about some amazing young pitchers like McClanahan, like Manoah, but I do think he's above those guys. That's how good he is. And on a team like the Braves, it seems to get the best out of their players every season. This is a real winner. Spencer Strider is my #1 pitcher. Alright guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hope you enjoyed. This might be a controversial list, but let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you guys all later. Goodbye.